Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and this is going to be one of those videos that I hoped I would never have to do. This is going to be a video about outright lying to customers, betraying customers, and violating customers' rights. Now, of course, we are talking about the Flight Sim Studios eJets series. And if you haven't seen the video I published a day ago on this particular topic, then I do recommend you to watch this prior to this one. Now, this video has received a lot of feedback. It's received 13,000 views within one day and a ratio of upvotes to downvotes of 95%. Now, this ratio is no longer shown to the general YouTube audience, but it is still shown to the people uploading those videos. So, 95% like ratio is less than it normally is on my channel, which is usually around 97-98%, but it still is a very high ratio, showing a lot of general agreement to this video. Now, there have been comments underneath the video that have been both positive and negative, and I want to address a couple of those before we actually go into what exactly is going on here. And let's start with something like this. There have been a lot of comments about Aerosoft and Aerosoft's involvement in the project, saying pretty much stuff like what you see on screen. Aerosoft, what is there to say? Now, honestly, there is a lot to say about Aerosoft, because Aerosoft manager Matthias Koch has also replied, saying, please note that though Aerosoft is shown with its logo, we are not the publisher nor the developer. In fact, we will just be one of the resellers. Now, that is an important statement. Aerosoft says straight away over here that they have nothing to do with the Embraer 175, other than that they will be a reseller of it. They have not developed it, they have not managed anything about it, so Aerosoft basically is out of the equation on this one. They are just a normal reseller like SimMarket, like the Microsoft Marketplace, etc. But let's go straight into some of the points of criticism that I received. The most important point here was that what part of early access did you miss? Don't buy it now if you don't want an unfinished aircraft. Well, what part of early access did I miss then? To be honest, quite a part, because watching the live stream on YouTube where the developer talks about the aircraft and where the aircraft is shown in action for the very first time portrays a very different image of the aircraft than the product page does. What we have to understand here, and what is very important, is that the vast majority of customers don't inform themselves about a product by looking, for example, at YouTube live streams, especially not watching an entire 3-hour live stream, but they look at the product page. This is actually reflected in European law, in that the product page has to contain all the information about the product, and it is not permissible for information to be scattered around YouTube on live streams, especially not vital information about what a product is and what a product is not. Now, Flight Sim Studio is a company registered in Switzerland, so European law does apply to them. And European law, amongst others, states that in order to sell a product online, you have to provide a concise description of what the product is and what it isn't. You must not hide any vital information in any drop-down menus that the customer could reasonably be expected not to find or not to understand. And you have to provide accurate information about your product. Now, we have seen a lot of early access products released in 2022 for Microsoft Flight Simulator, some of the most prominent being the PMDG 737 or the Phoenix A320 series, both of which, after approximately being on the market for 8 months, are still in early access. In both of those series of aircraft, we have seen systems added, like for example, PMDG added a new LNAV system, PMDG are still going to add an electronic flight bag, and Phoenix is also still going to add IAE engines and sharklets to their aircraft. Those are some very positive examples of what an early access can be. There are some examples that were perceived more negative in the community that included, for example, the TFDI MD-11, which also sold an early access version, which however only granted a future beta access, and there has not been any product directly delivered when you purchase this. However, what separates those three projects from this one is that they have been outright honest about what that project is about. Now, this one, however, is not. And this is my very first point of critique. So, let's go a little bit further downwards on the product page and actually read through what we have over here. So, it is clearly stated that this is the eJet series early access, as can clearly be seen over here. Now, first of all, we need to talk about what is the eJet series and what is in this product. Let's start by looking at Wikipedia. The Embraer eJet family is a series of 4 abreast narrow-body short to medium-range twin-jet airliners, including the E-170, 175, 190 and the E-195. So we're talking about 4 aircraft types over here. Now, if we have a look into the product page, it only says that this is a recreation of the eJet series, and it does not actually mention which aircraft types are included. So if we just click ourselves through all over here, then do please let me know if I missed something, but I don't believe that I did. And up here it only mentions something general about the eJets, but I cannot find anything saying which aircraft types are actually included in this package. Therefore, if the title of this one is eJet series, then clearly the consumer can expect the 4 aircraft Embraer 170, 175, 190 and 195 to be included in this product. Now, if we head over to the live stream, however, we find an entirely different image. So, the gentlemen at Cruise Levels have asked, so which types can be expected, and can we expect the Embraer 190 and 195 later on? Now, let's hear what the developer has to say over here.
It will definitely come. However, the E90 and 95 they are a little bit different. They will probably be sold as a separate package, but even that.
The Embraer 190 and 195 will probably be sold as a different package. Now, that is quite significant, isn't it? With 50% of the eJet lineup actually missing from the product, without even being mentioned on the product page. And this goes straight into where this developer is not only betraying us, but actually violating our consumer right in that he misadvertises what is included in the package. Now, some of you said, well, but he said it on the live stream, and that is totally true, he did. However, legally, the developer has to provide all information about his product directly on the product page, which simply is not the case in this preview. So, there is nothing on this project page saying that this is only the 170 and 175. A customer cannot be expected to watch a 3-hour live stream in its entirety only to find at some point, let's see, that 19 minutes and 20 into the live stream that certain aircraft belonging to the family that is advertised are not included. This is outright misinformation to the customer. Let's go ahead talking about misinformation. Now, I'm sure that most of you will be familiar right now that the developer has said that the real Embraer 190s and 170s VNAV would be an utterly unreliable system and therefore not used by real-life pilots. And therefore it has not been included in the Embraer. Now, this was of course also discussed in the comments underneath my live streams, for example like this. I brought that point up in an argument with somebody else, and that immediately 2 people chimed in and saying, I flew the 175 for the biggest 175 operator in the world, and literally everyone used VNAV all the time. And somebody else immediately agreed with him. Now, this led me to get concerned, and therefore I asked somebody who definitely knows this aircraft, because you guys know that in the airline I work for, there are a lot of ready entry pilots who previously flew other types. And luckily there is one among them who flew the Embraer 190 for 5 years previously. And so I asked him about the VNAV system. And he literally said the VNAV in the Embraer 170 and 190 series is as extensive as it is in the Boeing 737, and they used it to the same extent that we do. And we use VNAV as the default mode for everything. However, everybody could come ahead and just claim that, right? So I went on to Just Planes to have a look into some of their published videos of the real aircraft being flown, and I want to show you 3 examples of how VNAV is actually used in the real aircraft. So we'll start on this particular video from piloting the Embraer 190 from Antwerp to Berlin, and as we can see, there is clearly VNAV mode active in the descent. Going on to the second video, which is piloting the Air Canada Embraer 175 into LaGuardia. Once again, clearly VNAV is being used on the descent. And here's the third example of cockpit Embraer 190 to Quito, Ecuador, where clearly VNAV is used on the climb. Now, if you're worrying why this is saying FLCH, well, it is in magenta, which basically indicates that flight level change is following the VNAV constraints. Basically. Now that is the small example that the developer is outright lying to us. If he says that he has 15 real pilots on hand who all tell them that VNAV is crap and is not used in this aircraft. Clearly it is not. And this actually hurts me as a pilot, because there are certain certification requirements for aircraft. And you can believe me one thing, any passenger airliner that is currently out there flying is certified to a very high standard. If these things have a VNAV button, then you can believe me that VNAV is working. There is certification involved in this, and we're talking about multi-million-dollar machines transporting people, transporting lives. So if a developer comes along and tells me VNAV is so crap in an aircraft that we don't simulate it because it isn't used, that hurts me as a pilot. Let's go on then and have a look into what is actually simulated in this aircraft and what is not. I told you initially that this video is not just about lying, but it is also about betrayal and violating consumer rights. Now, let's get into that. It is true that it is stated that this aircraft is in early access, so regarding comments like this that I got underneath my video earlier, what part of early access did I miss? I missed no part of early access, but I demand that even an early access product does comply with legal requirements for selling something online. And part of that requirement include that information about what the product contains and what not has to be clearly given to the customer. Now, this is what they write on the product page. Most of the auto logic has already been implemented in the early access version. All normal operations procedures can be performed without any problems. And a little bit further down, also most systems can already, read the note already, referring to this being in the early access, be switched to manual mode should the situation require it. Now, what exactly did we say is missing once again? Well, first of all, that has to be clearly lined out on the project page, which is a legal requirement. So, at the very top it says, for more details about our progression, please check out our documentation as well as our roadmap. So let's go ahead and check out the roadmap. And we end up on the EJet MSFS roadmap page. So going into here, looking at the most voted features, it is not possible for the customer to tell if this stuff is actually included in the aircraft or not. Only if the customer goes to the roadmap and goes to check there, the customer can see what is included and what is not. Also, we have some version history up here, which basically says 0.9 is the initial public release. And note that 0.9, this is close to 10, so pretty much close to version 1.0, implies that this is a rather complete aircraft. And then version 0.091, scheduled with some emergency bug fixes, is scheduled for release exactly 2 weeks after the initial version. First of all, we can ask the question, if it is known that there will be emergency bug fixes required to the aircraft, why don't you just release it like 2 weeks later when you have fixed those emergency bugs? But the legally more relevant situation up here is how the customer can tell what is included and what is not. Now, if you go on this roadmap, where it is not quite clear, in my opinion, to the customer that he has to visit a roadmap at all, because further down it says the airplane can already be performed with all normal operations without any problems. But if we nonetheless go into the roadmap, then we see on here that we have items scheduled for phase 1 and items scheduled for phase 2. And if we look into the items scheduled for phase 1, we have autopilot warning, stick shaker animation, approach status indications in the PFD, go around flight director modes, IDG oil indicator simulation, and then we have this little view more button. Now, if you click on that, and click on that again, and click on that again, we see a lot of unimportant stuff over here, minor stuff that could indeed be deferred to an early access product. But if we click on it again and again, eventually towards the very bottom of the list we see stuff like weather radar, terrain radar, PFD green dot speeds, which are essential, vital information to conducting a flight under normal operation. So we have to click ourselves through how many view more buttons until we eventually get to see that this is not included yet? Let's start with phase 2 then. It is the very same thing once again. We have autopilot back course mode, something I never even used in my entire flying career in real life yet. Then we have passenger cabin temperature attendant position switches. Click on view more, we get the EGPWS. Okay, that might be more interesting, but surely there can't be much more interesting stuff if we click on here again, and again, and again. Oh, VNAV, speed altitude constraints, holdings, hidden somewhere down in the drop-down menu once again. This is outright trying to trick the customer into believing that all these systems are actually simulated already, as it says, all normal ops procedures can be performed without any problems, while this is clearly normal operation stuff. We're talking about VNAV, we're talking about the plane showing you your flap speeds, we're talking about the plane having basic functions that any airliner has that are missing from the product. So this is a clear attempt to fraud the customer into believing the product is something that it isn't. We can go ahead with this, talking about the flight management system. And here it says we have dedicated to code a completely own FMS system. We have already completed 60% of the backend logic, but there is still a long way to go. Now, looking into the live stream once again and looking into what's been said earlier on within the live stream, we actually get to see that, for example, the airplane does not have its own flight planning system. Look into this and look very closely. You can see the inbound waypoint is USR, Uniform Sierra Romeo. Those of you who fly default MSFS aircraft will be familiar that this is the default flight planning system of Microsoft Flight Simulator. And that is the way how it handles altitude waypoints. So, for example, at 1000 feet, make a left turn. It simply writes USR because it can't handle it. And this is what the E170 does over here. Indeed, at one point in the live stream, the developer goes along to say that they are using the default, admittedly crappy, that is set by the developer, flight planning system. Now, let me ask you a question. They say they have 60% of a fully custom FMS completed. It doesn't have VNAV, it doesn't have any constraints, it doesn't have LNAV apparently, because that is only the default MSFS GPS system down there. What is those 60%? Now, all of this is something that I hoped I would never have to say about any developer. I hope that this is something that flight simulation would stand over, and that flight simulation would not fall trap to scams like this. And yes, I did just say scams, because while it is not a scam like what you're used to from that Nigerian king who needs 5,000 euro to verify your bank account to transfer 20 million to you, this is still intentionally lying to you, say VNAV, intentionally misinforming you about what this aircraft can and cannot do, and violating your consumer rights in that the product page is required legally to state what this airplane can and cannot do. Now we are currently 4 days at the point of this recording from the initial release of the Embraer 170. I really hope that the developers did not do any of this intentionally, but just tried to set something quick up, and that they are going to correct all of this prior to the initial release. Right now they have not committed any crimes. They have not taken any money from you for an incorrect advert. So I really hope that this is just a giant misunderstanding and that they don't have any bad intentions at all. And therefore, that by the time this is released, the product page will be corrected to reflect the actual state of the project. Now, people under my first video said that we shouldn't be hating all those developers. Well, I'm not hating anybody. I'm just pointing out that they are legally on an unsafe way over here, and that I really hope this can be fixed. Now, somebody else said under my old video, or under yesterday's video, that why do you just complain instead of making any suggestions? Let me make a suggestion. Clearly, this Embraer is not what it seems to be from the product page and from the initial adverts prior to that live stream. So why not release it as a basic version first, where it is made clear that it is based on the default MSFS systems and on the default MSFS features, and then release a pro version later on that is going to include all those advanced features. But releasing it as it is right now by just saying it is an early access version, while not defining what early access actually means, or rather while incorrectly defining it and implying that it has more than it actually has as of the 7th of January 2022. That is something you should really think about. Now, I hope that you have found this video interesting. I hope that you have learned something on it, but I do very much look forward to your discussion. Tell me what you think about how this developer is advertising their product and what this developer is doing over here. Tell me what you think about a developer saying VNAV in a multi-million-dollar aircraft is crap and not used, while there is clear evidence on the internet that it is if you just look into real-life videos from the airplane. I'm looking forward to your discussion, and until then, I would like to wish you a very nice morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is when you're watching this. And rest assured, once the Embraer is actually out, I am going to give this a try, and I am going to let you guys know what I think about the final product as it is released to market. Until then, I'm looking forward to see you all again very soon, and look forward to read your discussion underneath this video.